could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silence.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, could you please go ahead and call the roll?
Councilmember Mappy,
Here.
Councilmember Bolin. Here. Councilmember Motney. Here. Councilmember Emig,
Present.
Councilmember Becker,
Here.
Councilmember Urban. Here. Councilmember Ward,
Here.
Councilmember Crable,
Here.
Councilmember Crumpler,
Here.
Mayor Millawample.
Here, thank you. The next item on the agenda is recognitions and appointment, and we have several proclamations to read here. And to present the first proclamation we have in National American Indian Heritage Month. And I do believe we have someone here to receive the proclamation.
Yes,
Lauren?
Yeah, Laura.
Laura, sorry, Laura. Okay. So, whereas the history and culture of our great nation have been significantly influenced by American Indians and indigenous people, and whereas the contributions of American Indians have enhanced the freedom, prosperity, and greatness of America today, and whereas their customs and traditions are respected and celebrated as a part of a rich legacy throughout the United States, and whereas Native American Awareness Week began in 1976 and recognition was expanded by Congress and approved by President George Bush in August 1990, designating the month of November as National American Indian Heritage Month. And whereas in honor of National American Indian Heritage Month, community celebrations, as well as numerous cultural, artistic, educational, and historical activities have been planned. Now, therefore, I, Mboka Malambwe, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of Bloomington, Illinois, do hereby proclaim November as the National American Indian Heritage Month in the city of Bloomington, and urge all of our citizens to observe this month with appropriate programs, ceremonies, and activities. Thank you. You can say a few words if you like to the mic. It's like, okay, all right, thank you. Okay, our next proclamation is National Runaway Prevention Month, November 2021. Whereas November is National Runaway Prevention Month, and whereas National Runaway Prevention Month began in 2002 and is presented each year by the National Runaway Safe Line, the federally designated national communication system for runaway and homeless youth. And whereas runaway youth are often expelled from their home, have experienced trauma, struggle to meet basic needs, and are at increased danger of falling into high-risk situations, including human trafficking. And whereas Project Oz is working to raise awareness, support, and resources for young people in the community, therefore, be it resolved that I, Mboka Malambwe, the mayor of Bloomington, Illinois, do hereby proclaim November as National Runaway Prevention Month in Bloomington, Illinois, and encourage all citizens to appreciate the role that we can all play in advocating for and providing safe alternatives to this vulnerable population of young people. Who do we have to receive this proclamation?
We have Neil Eden who is the director of Project Oz.
Okay, thank you. And if you'd like to say a few words, we certainly are welcome to do so. Thank you. And the next item on the recognition is recognition by Fire Department Mission Lifelines EMS Recognition Award as requested by the Fire Department. I believe we have Travis Wilson to present this.
Yes, so every year, the American Heart Association tracks care given by EMS agencies across the nation. And Bloomington Fire has been able to demonstrate over the past year excellent care with patients who are having heart attacks. That includes from dispatch all the way to the hospital. The care that they provide is integral in people's survival and their outcomes. And Bloomington Fire has had excellent outcomes with patients that they've interacted with over the past year. And they're always on the process of continuing to improve themselves. And because of that, the American Heart Association awards Bloomington Fire the Silver Plus Award for EMS care. I'll give this to Corey Naveen.
Thank you. If you could say a few words, we'd appreciate it.
Just want to say thank you. We appreciate the support from everybody in the council and the city administration. This goes back years, the hard work and dedication these guys have put in, and the data collection that we now are able to take and show progress in how we're treating people and improving patient outcomes. We do have some members from Carl Broman in the audience here as well, that the cardiology teams over there, and it's one big team how we work together and improve these outcomes. So this is the EMS portion, and what they do in the hospital also reflects on this for the total time it takes to get people into the cath lab. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much. Hey, the community really appreciates your service. We really thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is public comment. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment?
Hi, we do. So first, I'll just start by reading a list of all the emailed public comment. We received email public comment from Rachel Witt, David Wasson, Bonnie Billington, Nikki Gwynn, Audrey Paulson, Kathy Heitman, Sherry Williams, David and Sharon Campbell, Karen Miller, Janet Torno, Rob Byer, Amanda Brown, Amy Lane, Ace Overton, Sarah Greenberg, Carl Powell, Josephus Sayer, Kelly Cummings, and Kathy Ethington. That said, we have two available for virtual if you'd like to start with those.
Sure. And I'm going to go ahead and read my statement about public comment. Public comment is an opportunity for speakers to provide their views and feedback to the City Council. It is also an opportunity for the City Council to listen and hear diverse points of view. To maximize the impact of public comment and show respect for the expression of all views, speakers should maintain civility and focus on city issues. Speakers must identify themselves for the record, but are not required to give their address. Each speaker is given the floor for 3 minutes, and the council does not respond or engage in debate. Any speaker that engages in threatening or disorderly behavior will be deemed out of order and their time ceased. Thank you.
So first up, we have Jacqueline Byer on virtually. Jacqueline, if you could press *6 to unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me now?
We can.
Okay. So my name is Jacqueline Byer. Good evening. I would like to address your plans to vote for increasing our property taxes to fund an estimated $22.8 million library expansion. I am very much opposed to the idea of a tax increase and opposed to a library expansion at this time, given the state of the economy and the priorities of the residents. What happens if, in the middle of the build, the cost of materials skyrocket, as we have seen in lumber prices? Will you raise the property taxes again so the project can finish? What happens if the supply chain issues continue? What if materials are not available? Will we be sitting with an unusable library for years to come? Even though property tax increase is estimated to be only $14.07 for a house valued at $78,500, a house valued at $78,500 is a starter home for people who are most likely tight on cash to begin with. $14.07 a year is $1.17 per month, which can even buy a dozen eggs right now. Inflation is hitting everyone hard right now. In my household alone, our property taxes increased 3.4% from last year, driven by Unit 5. Our homeowners insurance increased 16%. Our auto insurance increased 24%. Gasoline prices are up 50%. Natural gas prices are supposed to increase our heating bills up to 50% this winter. Groceries are up. Dining out is up. Inflation is hitting consumers far above the 5% the federal government would like you to believe. The property tax increase will also hit landlords who have lost income due to the eviction moratorium. It will affect businesses and restaurants that own their buildings as they are still trying to recover from lost revenue due to COVID. You say that the library expansion works towards the goals of upgrading city infrastructure and facilities, as well as a financially sound city providing quality basic services. The library facility already provides quality basic services. However, our infrastructure does not, and it is in dire need of upgrading. The recent flooding proves that our sewer system needs an overhaul. Our roads are in desperate need of repair. Water main breaks pop up. I walked for hours, days, and miles canvassing Ward 3 for Sheila, speaking and listening to Ward 3 residents. In listening to their concerns, the overwhelming priorities expressed were roads, public safety, and no tax increases. Only one resident said that she was in favor of a library expansion. Housing prices are increasing, which will increase the assessed value, which alone will increase property tax bills for home and business owners. There should be no reason to increase the tax rate for anything, and none of our tax dollars should be spent on a library expansion at this time. In summary, the library expansion is a nicety, not a necessity, and the people of Bloomington resoundingly do not want the expansion nor any tax increase. Reach out to your constituents to hear them, rather than rely on a small number of loud people who make public comment. Align the budget and the project priorities with most resident priorities. Most of all, don't spend money we don't have. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Next.
Next up, we have Jordan Gomez Bonner, who is also online. Jordan, if you could press *6 to speak, please.
Hi, my name is Jordan. I was kind of asked to speak last minute, so I don't have anything prepared. As I understand, a certain amount of money is being asked to expand the library. And the largest reason that I've heard for not wanting to expand the library is a tax increase. And while I understand that that might be a concern, now that I hear the breakdown of how much this tax increase is, I pay 9 times that for Netflix every month. And I feel as though opposing something that could be so beneficial to so many people is absurd when I spend so much money on so many other things that are niceties. For me, I don't go to the library very much anymore, but it is a very big deal for me and my sister when I do go. I grew up going to the library. I just feel as though even if you were to double a $17 tax increase a year to $32, $34, I highly doubt if no one told you, you would even notice that it was there. $34 a year is such a small price to pay for the amount of benefit that you would get from the library expanding. I don't think that interests in the city are mutually exclusive. I don't think that because one thing is an issue, something else has to be disregarded. And yes, while there are other concerns, there's no plan to fund the sewage system being overhauled There's no plan to overhaul all of the roads. There is a plan to expand our library though, and denying dollars from that in order to fund projects that are not in existence at this time, to me, doesn't make any sense. I personally would gladly give up $2 a month in order to see the library expanded if it benefited the community and the youth in that community. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to remind everyone to be sure that everyone is wearing a mask, because all of us are wearing one. So please make sure you wear your mask.
And we do have some available with Amanda, my deputy, right behind me if anyone needs one.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
Would you like to
Can you
move
go
forward? Okay. So we do have quite a few people for in person. So just remind everyone if they can keep their message brief and to the point, that'll allow everyone to speak. The first up is Levi Champion, and then after that, Zach Carlson.
Hello, I'm Levi Champion from Ward 6. I'm speaking on behalf of myself and my wife, who is a downtown business owner that couldn't be here tonight because she's teaching yoga. I'm here to ask you to vote yes on funding the proposal for the library expansion. Why do I feel this way? So it's important to remember what libraries mean to a community. The Brookings Institute calls libraries third places. I'm going to quote from a study that they did in a subsequent article about libraries. Urban planners seeking to stabilize neighborhoods are focusing on the critical role that third places can play in strengthening our sense of community. Third places are a place where random and intentional in-person relationships are made. Third places is a term coined by sociologist Ray Oldenburg and refers to places where people spend time between home, which is first place, and work, second place. Third places are locations where we exchange ideas, have a good time, and build relationships. For young Americans, many third places are now virtual, from social media and chat rooms to group texts. But Oldenburg notes the most effective ones for building real community seem to be physical places where people can easily and routinely connect with each other, which are like places of worship, parks, rec centers, and of course, libraries. A recent newspaper article on McDonald's found that lower income Americans find the Twin Arches are becoming almost the equivalent of an English pub, which stands for public house. Groups of retirees meeting for coffee and talk, and people treat the restaurant as an inexpensive hangout. Third places have a number of important community building attributes. Depending on their location, social classes, and backgrounds, those types of things can be leveled out in these third places. And that's becoming increasingly rare these days. Informal conversation is the main activity and most important linking function. One commentator refers to third places as the living room of society. What this tells me is that even the simple act of hanging out and creating the strong social bonds that a community can thrive on over time will become more and more expensive to those without means. Here are some additional data from Pew Research from 2017. Pew found that over 90% of adults think of public libraries as welcoming and friendly places, and about half have visited or otherwise used a public library in the last 12 months. Think about that for a second, 90%. We live in a country and a community that is split on almost every major issue, and 90% agree on this. The cost of waiting. So if you want to get into numbers, I love numbers, I'm a data person, let's look at that. If you agree that funding expansion is important, but you want to wait, here's some cost differences. Consider the low interest rate environment we're currently in. I'm sorry, I'm out of time.
Thank you.
1.8% interest would
Sorry,
cost about
Levi,
20 million,
Yeah, thank
22
you,
million,
thank you.
and then 24 million.
If you want, you can give your statement to the clerk and then we can pass it around. Okay, thank you. Okay, next.
All right. So next up, we have Zach Carlson, and then to follow him will be Luisa Gomez.
Hello, my name is Zach Carlson, also from Ward 6. I want to speak primarily the library, but first I want to thank the mayor for finally giving me representative in Ward 6. I emailed you, in July. I'm glad we finally got to it. It took us a while, a little get cut into the edge there, and we'll see how it goes. The library itself, the expansion is absolutely needed. It is a critical space. It is somewhere where people can gather freely. I, as a homeowner, I only want to pay $25 more in taxes. I don't care. I'll go to coffee on once or twice less. It's no big deal. If we're really pinching for money, I see that the police union contract is coming up. A union is a laughable word for them, but I digress. Vote it down. Save that money right there. Easy enough. The fire is doing great. Police don't need it. These critical spaces I was mentioning is a free space for people to meet. We're celebrating homeless runaway kids this month. Libraries are a safe space for them, especially somewhere to get warm, somewhere to enjoy themselves, somewhere to be safe. They leave high anxiety households, high violence households. They need somewhere to be. So please vote yes on this expansion. I know the former Ward 6 alderperson would, and I'd hope that the current one follows in their footsteps. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach.
Next up
Yeah.
is Luisa Gomez and then Janae Clark.
Good evening, Luisa Gomez, Ward 6. I am back again. I feel like this is like a thing, but I wanted to come and talk about why I'm in support of the expansion of the public library. I am in support of it because I have two adult children. I have a 9-year-old daughter and I have grandchildren, and we all love the library. We love the books. We love the experience. We love the summer reading program. And to expand those services speaks volumes as to how it would help 61701. I can't say that enough. 61701. We need this just like we need O'Neill Pool. It should be a no-brainer. When I broke down the numbers, it was $32.05 if the parking deck was added, which is $384.60 per year, which turns out to be $7,692. No parking structure is $349.68 and $6,993.60. I went on Zillow and I looked, and right now there's 92 houses listed in 61701. You know how many of them are over $165,000? 22 houses. So while we're talking about money, and my daughter who pointed out earlier online, who was the Netflix, I think we can do that for our community. But my daughter wanted to share a little something, so I'm going to give her the mic and share my time.
Hello, I'm Angel Gomez Delio, and I really just wanted to talk about the library and how excited I am. So the library is going to be a great place, and I love going there because of all the books, and you can have a really good imagination. And I love how they're going to expand it and have a sensory room, because I have a friend that is on the spectrum, and I think she would really love it and really enjoy it. So she really loves the library, and I'm just as excited as the library as I am as O'Neill Pool. I love how the library has activities, and they're going to expand it with sound booths just in case you want to do a podcast, and they have so many different books. And
Oh, yes. All right, so for the Gomez and the Gomez Bonner family, we're asking that you vote yes for the library expansion. It's no reason to not do it, and it's always a right time to do the right thing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much to the Gomez duo. Next,
Next up, we have Janae Clark, and then after her, Gary Lambert.
Hello. I don't have anything planned to say because I've just been since last week asking around and seeing what people thought of our new appointment. And well, actually, first of all, there's a lot of things that people don't know that's going on with this whole process and with council members. And like, for example, Donna, she showed up at Jen Carrillo's house, you know, under the pretenses that she wanted to look at it to buy, just so she could snoop around. I mean, really? I thought that was pretty, I mean, she seems to speak for Sheila, who doesn't have a mind of her own. So, you know, anything Donna does, Sheila just follows. And when you saw last week, the reason that people gave that they did not want the current person sitting in the Ward 6 seat was because they're completely the opposite of what we elected. And she knows it, don't you? But yet you just accepted it anyway. I thought you were going to, you know, say that you weren't going to accept it because, you know, you're not wanted. So anyway, I want to thank the people who did vote no. And unlike the mayor said, those no votes mean something. Because you know why they voted no? Go back and look. Because you did take a shit on democracy when you sat her in that seat. I'm just gonna, I'm gonna spend my whole time up here, so
you have more?
I'll let you know when I do.
Okay, keep going.
Oh, okay, back to D. So apparently you're a failed business owner. And currently you're just a co-owner because you're collecting disability or something, and being a full owner would somehow, these are things that I'm hearing, these are things people are talking about. And that you also use some kind of legal degree to scam people out of money. So that's who else we have sitting there. And let's see. Well, you're against the library, so, and everybody should know that the majority of what will pay for that is the wealthier people who don't care about $1.17. I mean, a month, really? That's that's your argument? Oh my God, $1.17 a month. So, I mean, I'm just giving you some things to think about. You've said you're against the library. Well, the library benefits the people of your ward more than anyone else, arguably. So to vote against it, you are doing exactly the opposite of what you promised to do, which is listen to your constituents. And this constituent is saying that you should step down because you don't belong there. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And I'm only gonna, I typically don't respond, but I'm only gonna do this for this particular time. Janae, this is the second time you've come up to the podium and used derogatory language. And I'm gonna ask you not to do that again. And that's the end of it. Thank you.
Next
Go.
up,
Next one.
next up, we have Gary Lambert, and then to follow Mary Carlisle.
Good evening. Let me start by saying I love libraries. I think I owe much of the success that I've achieved in my limited lifetime due to a small Carnegie Library located in the town of Delavan. But you know what they had in that building? Books. What I see proposed is not a library. It's a social club. And that's fine. But let's call it what it is. I see in the paper that's advertised, what, $30 for an average house? I just saw online this afternoon that the average used home sale is $192,000. The average new home is $325,000. Does anybody in front of me here live in an average home of $165,000? I tend to look at numbers and how we've been burned with most other large endeavors. Is this expansion of the library going to cause increased operational cost? Are we going to run into things like we did at the Coliseum where, oh, our air conditioner's worn out now, so here's another few $100,000. How about the parking? Are we going to follow this on with another request for another tax increase? I believe good government should be entitled to a certain percentage of an individual's income. What I do not believe is that government, no matter how well-intentioned any individual project is, has the right to demand an ever-increasing portion of an individual's income. And I believe that's what's happening here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Gary. Who's next?
Next up, we have Mary Carlisle, and then to follow Scott Steinling.
My name is Mary Carlisle. The taxpayers of Bloomington have serious concerns about the way tax dollars are spent, or more accurately, misspent. 25 years ago, the EPA issued guidance regarding the necessary separation of storm and sanitary sewer systems. Municipalities were asked to voluntarily bring these systems into compliance by separating them so that residents would not have their basements flooded with raw sewage and stormwater during excessive rain events. Unfortunately, the people's representatives in the city of Bloomington have neglected their fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayers over the last 25 years. Instead of investing in replacing and upgrading a failed 70-year-old storm and sanitary sewer system, they have chosen instead to spend money where it is neither needed nor wanted. The citizens of Bloomington did not want the Albatross, also known as the Coliseum, yet the city council representatives at the time voted for it anyway. We are now stuck with the high price of owning and maintaining it, while our tax dollars should have been properly allocated to replacing this old storm and sanitary sewer system. Every time it rains, they have to deal with the aftermath of the willful negligence of the representatives who came before all of you. Once again, we have future projects on the table which are not as important as properly fixing and replacing the broken storm and sanitary sewer system. We do not need to be spending taxpayer dollars on a library expansion. A library which offers pornographic books to young people, cleverly packaged as graphic novels. I wrote to you about this, Mayor. Neither do we need to be spending taxpayer dollars on a new water park. Originally, the O'Neill pool needed to be replaced, which is fine. Replace it with a pool. Anything over and above that is an unnecessary use of our tax money when we have a broken, failed storm and sanitary sewer system that is well past needing to be replaced. Another idea floating around that we do not need is a bus transfer station. Again, we do not want tax money spent on things we do not need. The storm, sewer, and sanitary sewer system that our neighbors are forced to live with is inequitable as well as an extremely serious health hazard. Who can argue that having raw sewage come up in your basement is not healthy? What we are asking of you tonight is this: have the backbone and the leadership to demonstrate your fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayers of Bloomington. Have the decency as people to demonstrate your concern for your neighbors who have to live with a failed storm and sanitary sewer system.
Thank you.
Can
Mayor.
you imagine? Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Scott Steimling, and then to follow Mark Girdler.
Scott Steimling. I would like one thing, several things addressed. One, when there's a big storm, that the inlets that cannot keep up with the lousy flow of the water. All it takes is putting another 4-inch inlet beside that 4-inch inlet, raising the streets before you do it. I don't know if it's going to take somebody being flooded out of their house or not, but I hope not. Also with the roads, they're even with the curb line. The curb line is even with the grass in places. And we call this a city that we should be proud of. As you come into Bloomington, I would think that they should say, welcome to Bloomington, home of the potholes, rotten roads, high taxes. Because if you keep going, all you're doing is raise taxes. I mean, they're high enough the way it is. And I feel that the speakers before me were very to the point. And I would hope that the city council would really take this to heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Next.
Next up, we have Mark Girdler, and then Matthew Tosco and Serena Fish to follow.
Good evening, Bloomington City Council. My name is Mark Girdler. I wanted to open by telling the mayor that you might want to consult with the city attorney on how the Open Meeting Act works. But I have many times worked with the Public Access Counselor's Office of the Attorney General. Derogatory comments are protected speech. Whatever you want to say up here is public speech, as long as it's not threatening or disrupt the meeting. Nothing that Janae did disrupted this meeting in any way whatsoever. In fact, you violated the Open Meeting Act when you repeatedly interrupted her for no reason. I mean, I understand you don't like what she has to say, but it makes you seem like you're a pretty tyrannical person. And since you're now appointing your friends to local government, that kind of, not a good look. But Good Housekeeping Magazine says that you should open with a compliment before you criticize someone. So I want to say that I think Bloomington has done a great job of, from the outside, making your city appear like it's nicer and more progressive than, say, a city like Decatur. But when you really look at it, it's just a veneer. It's the same thing happening here that's happening in Decatur. A handful of petty bureaucrats who are using their positions to get their friends' jobs, their families' jobs, do whatever they can do to carry water for business owners, landlords, local elites. I mean, Ward 6 basically is operating, being taxed without representation. They sent a clear message what they wanted. You completely ignored it. You ignored the will of the council just to appoint your friend who, again, nobody wants. People want the library. They don't want this lady. They don't want some corporate bootlicker coming in here and going completely against the will of the ward. And I know that you think things like that and ignoring half the city to serve the interests of your donors is a good look for you, but it isn't. People are getting fed up. They're tired of the way that they're being treated. And eventually that veneer is going to start to really wear away. People in Decatur, Springfield, Champaign are all being contacted about the things that are happening in this city. So I would hope that you would want to put up something good for people, helpful like the library, instead of listening to people worried about it. I'll pay Jacqueline's $14 if it's that big of a deal to her. And I know that to bureaucrats like you, you think this is business as usual, the cronyism, the corruption, but we see it for what it is. A group of rats clinging to a sinking ship, trying desperately to get their claws on one last piece of grain before the system collapses underneath them. But people are waking up. Poor people are tired of suffering. The working class is tired of being exploited. And even the progressives and the moderates are tired of being lied to. We will have progress. We will have unity, and we will do it under the hammer and the sickle. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Mark. Next.
All right. Next, we have Matthew Tosco and then Serena Fish, and then that's the end of public comment. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Matt. Given that the usurpation of Ward 6 democratic will per the 19 elections by the mockery of democracy surrounding the appointment of D. Urban has rendered this body illegitimate and fundamentally without any consent to govern, I am solely speaking here to use this platform to issue an open letter to all those business interests looking at possibly locating here, from that battery factory to those other 100 plus touted in the media. Dear potential Bloomington businesses, the mayor and this council have unabashedly given no poops about local democracy in the appointment of D. Urban to the Ward 6 seat, thus sacrificing any legitimacy of this body on that altar of capitalist business interests, and therefore have no legitimate claim to govern. Given these circumstances, my message to all of you is this: we will aggressively unionize your workforce. We will aggressively, by word of mouth among our working class communities, sabotage you and smear your name in the public sphere every step of the way if you don't provide a living wage, 100% cost-free complete health care, livable shift scheduling, and democratically worker-controlled workspaces. We will demand that you hire 90% from our existing community, and if the human resources you require aren't already present, well, you better plan ahead and develop that workforce you need among those who are already here, however long and at whatever cost to you alone that takes. That's right. No more importing a workforce that does nothing but screw our costs of living and jack up our housing prices. And to hell with tax breaks or incentives. If you come here, you can contribute your full share. Let me say this loud and clear. If you won't uplift our communities, we don't want you here. And we will do everything we can to bend your capitalist whims to our working class will if you insist on forcing yourselves upon us. Thank you.
And
Thank you,
Mayor,
Matthew.
I do apologize. I also have Tim Tilton down. I just forgot to say his name. So it'll be Serena Fish and then Tim Tilton.
Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
Good evening. I just want to clear one point. Ward 6, I'm head of West Side Neighbors, but I also want to clear up a misconception. We had elections 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 2 years ago. Our last election was this spring. All posts that were running, progressives lost, DSA lost, and the person that was their campaign manager disappeared off the face of the earth. So where is she? What is she doing except writing scripts for people? The other thing, so the person that is now Ward 6 was chosen because of her beliefs. I suggest you all get to know her before you decide what's in her heart and on her mind and what she does for her community. The last thing is that I've been doing a lot of research on the library, and for my decision, I would like to see it put on a public referendum and let the people of the city vote yes or no, and we actually go through with it. It's all of our decision. It's all of our community. It's all of our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Serena.
Thank you. And last up, we'll have Tim Tilton.
10 Tilton, Ward 6. I'm speaking in regards to the library as it pertains to the Creativity Center and the development of that area. Looking for a level of duplication and in space and function. We'd like to see that the Creativity Center, which has already started its renovation, it's already raised privately, not tax dollars, over $1 million and has put up a new roof and a new AC unit for a space of over 32,000 square feet. It is going to include a black box theater, art studios, music rooms, dance studios, recording studios, gallery space, office space for local artists, in addition to general meeting space. There are some proposals in the library plans that would duplicate some of these facilities. And I would just encourage the council as they make their considerations to look at what the two areas are offering and proposing, keeping in mind that the Creativity Center is not being funded with tax dollars as a primary entity. So if you would take a look at that, please. Ask your city manager or others to provide you with the kind of a checks and balances of what each area is doing. And then try to look at the development of the library and make some determinations as to allocation of funds. And we thank you so much.
Thank you, Tim. Okay, so that concludes.
That concludes public comment. And Julie, I'm sorry, Councilmember Emig, if you could look at yours for voting for the consent, that would be great. Thank you. Sorry, apologies.
Okay, so next item on the consent is the consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda that members of the council would like to have removed? Councilmember Ward?
Yeah, I would like to ask that item C be removed. I need to abstain on that.
Okay, sounds good. Anybody else? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented? I see Councilmember Bolin.
Yes, I will approve. I'll second.
Okay, and second by Councilmember Craybill. And if you could please vote consent agenda minus item C. Oh, Councilmember, you need to, could you? Yeah, oh, sorry. Yes, you're right. After that, yes, sorry. Okay, the consent agenda minus item C passes, no nays to announce. Next item on the agenda is item C on the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve item C?
I'll make the motion to approve item C.
Okay, Councilmember Bolin, second by Councilmember Matthey. Discussion? No, okay, if you could please go ahead and vote. Okay. The item passes. There are no nays to announce. And if somebody could bring back Councilmember Ward. Thank you. Welcome back. So next, we're going to move on to the regular agenda, and we have item 8A, consideration and action to ratify the UDIT 21 contract as requested by the Human Resources Department and the Police Department. And I'm going to turn it over to City Manager Gleason for a few comments.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is a collective bargaining agreement with Unit 21 of the Police Benevolent that represents the patrol officers for the Bloomington Police Department. While negotiations have gone on for a couple of years, we have agreed to this collective bargaining agreement that's before council tonight. Staff recommendation that we approve this. It was ratified by the Unit 21 membership, and this will be the last step in this process. Some of the highlights of the contract, and there was not many to report on, but 2.5% increase for that would be effective May 1st of 2020, 2.5% increase effective May 1st of 21, and then a 2.5% increase effective May 1st of 2022. Also bilingual pay for officers that speak a second language and then also additionally can read a second language. And then compression of some of the vacation to the earned vacation time that's comparable to other collective bargaining agreements. And then also under the drug and alcohol language was updated to reflect the continued prohibition of cannabis use for employees in Unit 21. Thank you.
Is there a motion?
I will make a motion to approve the contract.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Bowling. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, second by Councilmember Becker. Discussion? Okay, seeing none. Madam Clerk, would you please go ahead and vote? Okay, the item passes. There are no nays to announce. Next item on the agenda is item 8B. Consideration and action on a joint resolution between the Bloomington Public Library and the City of Bloomington relating to the funding of the library expansion project as requested by the Finance Department. And I'm going to turn it over to City Manager Gleason for comments.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is a conversation that's gone on in this community for quite some time. About 3 years ago, worked with the library board led by Julian Westerhout and the new director of the library, Jeannie Hamilton. And staff have got to the point today, after several meetings, that I felt comfortable bringing this forward to council for a resolution that has no financial impact, but it is a resolution that supports the funding for the library. We do have staff that can take questions if there are some. While I did not feel that this was a unanimous vote, I felt that there was overwhelming support for the library and felt this appropriate to bring this resolution before council tonight and the community. And that starts a process for the funding component for this project. I'll take any additional questions if there are any, Mayor.
Thank you. Should we go with a motion first? Is there a motion to approve the
I'll
resolution?
move.
Second.
Okay, moved by Councilmember Ward and second by Councilmember Matthey, and discussion. Okay, Councilmember Crumpler.
Thank you, Mayor. In my ward, I received input from my constituents, some who encouraged me to support the library expansion, others who were concerned that it was not the right direction. I would like to say this evening, I plan to vote for the resolution, but I do have a few points I'd like to make. The proposal was was revised from 37 to 20 million, and the library is contributing 5 million of its own savings. which to me signals fiscal responsibility and the willingness to manage a realistic project. There is a extraordinarily low interest rate right now, and I think it's an opportunity for us to invest in our community. I think we should take it. I do want to bring up project labor agreements right now so that it's out front. And I really hope that as bids are requested, as this project goes forward, we want to work with our local unions from the onset to make sure they're part of the discussion of this project. And finally, I live in the far northeast part of Bloomington. It takes twice as long as for me to travel to Towanda as it does to travel to our library. And I just want to say that as we keep developing subdivisions farther and farther out, we risk distancing new families from our downtown core. However, with the new water retention basin on the east side near the library, this could actually provide attractive green space for the area. With an expanded library, improved landscaping, and more convenient parking, I think these families who are moving into these new areas are much more likely to see a trip to our library worth their time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Craybill and then Montney.
Thank you, Mayor. So we've just spent 3 months discussing and voting on what I would call hard infrastructure. Now we're voting on another kind of infrastructure, people infrastructure. If we don't provide avenues to improve the lives of people in our community, what are the new roads and sewers going to matter? It wasn't long ago that many of us thought this would never get to this point. But credit to Jeannie, Tim, and the library board for getting us here. And we're talking about a very modest increase. Even after the increase in size and the renovation, it'll still be smaller than the libraries in Decatur and Champaign, who have a proportional population. It adds children's space, teenager space, study rooms, community rooms, and a discovery zone. It provides privacy for people that are using the computer lab, which they don't have now. Think of people that don't have computers or the internet. Kids may not have things to do or a quiet place to study, and this provides them that. I also would want to make note that Melissa Hahn was quoted in the paper on a different matter discussing bringing in new type of technology businesses. She mentioned the quality of life factor and pride of place, and I think this adds to that. I think we're being very fiscally responsible, like Tim said. I'm sorry, as Tom said. We haven't really had any major tax increases, as what I understand, for 10 years, and maybe more so with the library board. And it will still be less than all the other comparable cities with regard to a library tax rate. We're going to get a very low interest rate now. If we wait, even a percentage point higher on interest rates would likely add about $2 million to the cost of this project. I had a town hall, knocked on residents' doors, both houses and apartments, even went to the park this weekend. Nearly unanimous support from parents with kids, older folks who remember when they took their kids, or would like to go to the library now and just hang out and read newspapers. The most often comment I would get is that they've been going to the library for so many years and nothing has changed, nothing has improved. We just approved the police collective bargaining agreement, and police do handle symptoms of societal issues such as poverty and income equality. And there have been studies linking poverty to crime. And there's also studies showing that when you provide resources like libraries, that helps reduce poverty. So I am 100% in favor of this library expansion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Craybill. Councilmember Montney.
I'd like to talk about where things were 8 years ago with the city. The city's budget in 2013 was $167 million. And today it's about $252 million. And so when we look at a project isolated like this, we look at it as if we're talking about the merits of the library. And that's not what this discussion is about. this discussion is about how we place in context our role in stewarding appropriately cost, monies that don't belong to us personally, and also opportunity cost, as was mentioned in several of these public comments. The price of the library, including its finance charge and the O'Neill pool, is equal to the amount we spent on the Coliseum. And there's an incredible amount of passion around that decision, where we did go specifically to the public and ask for input, and then made the decision to go another direction anyway. And in these situations, and I will share that I'm a fan of the library. I think the library has done an excellent job managing their resources. But when we're talking about spending what will ultimately be $26 million, that's different than just saying this is about the merits of the library. The library has a tremendous fan base. While I haven't been able to get the detailed circulation statistics, it's my understanding that roughly a third of the circulation currently is in movie rentals. And when you look at the role of the library for the future, I appreciate the comment that was talking about public spaces, both in the context of third places, but also in the context of community centers. As we look at what the campaign for the library is all about, it really isn't about the core mission of a library as a mechanism for supporting literacy and supporting education. It is a proposal that is much broader than that. It's a proposal that's about the vision for an entity that we talk about as if it's a library, but our investment here is something completely different than what is commonly believed to be a library. I again respect the significant amount of effort that's been put into these conversations over the years. I believe in 2020, in August, the amount of the investment requested was in the 15 million range, and now we are at 22.6. I watched meetings in 2018 where the council at that time talked about, if we spend 10 million here, that's 10 million we can't spend somewhere else. And the context of that conversation in the prior council was around, should we invest in the pool or should we invest in the library expansion? But when I reflect on the number one reason that people leave our state, when I reflect on 251,700,000 compared to 167 million just a few years ago, that's indicative of a need to make choices that are not isolated, but are in context and are strategically aligned with what's important to our constituents. The number one concern I heard in speaking to so many people is roads, sewer infrastructure. That passion remains out there. We've heard heartbreaking stories about our sewer infrastructure and our need to invest there. And yet we're taking essentially the opportunity here to spend another Coliseum in these two investments. It is not about the library. It's about the context of where will we draw the line and how do we value opportunity cost as we're making decisions here, and respect for what's in the best interest of our community holistically and its financial health.
Thank you. So we're going to go with Councilmember Ward and then Councilmember Matthew.
Thank you. I would just like to point out that libraries are nothing new in our world. The world has had libraries since ancient times. The relatively new thing is public libraries and the idea that public libraries bring knowledge and information to everybody. Books, knowledge, information from ancient times were the stronghold of the rich and the powerful, and it kept them rich and it kept them powerful. Throughout medieval times, books were things that only the rich and the powerful could have control over, and knowledge was something that only the rich and the powerful could have control over. In more recent times, the ability to read, that to have access to books keeps or breaks down the access to knowledge and information and ultimately some power. The mark of a civilized community, the mark of a civilized society is critical thinking. And those critical thinking skills don't just happen by accident. They happen when people have access to information. And frankly, it needs more than just a Google search to do research and to gain those critical thinking skills. The difference is public libraries. This public library expansion supports that. And so in response to the question of where do you draw the line, I'm happy to not have a line that marks out some people from having knowledge and books and access to information. I don't really care if there's a line around that. I'd like there to be fewer lines around that. So I will be voting in favor of this.
Thank you, Councilmember Matthey. And then Becker and Emig.
Thanks, Mayor. So I'm incredibly happy that we are voting on this tonight because this has been a project that was we were working on when I was first appointed in 2013. And here we are 8 years later, and we're finally making some progress on this and moving the ball forward. So that's pretty exciting. Just a couple of thoughts to Mr. Tilton. Space inside the library doesn't really overlap with spaces in the Creativity Center except for names alone. I was in the Cultural Commission for 5 years, and I believe the Creativity Center is also necessary. That we'll get there with that building as well. There's the one place I can think of, there's a recording space that's inside of there, but the recording space at the Creativity Center is aimed at musicians and artists to record there. Whereas the recording space in the proposed library expansion is smaller and aimed more at podcasts and webcasts and things of that nature. And if you ask the kids in my wife's 4th grade class, they are all going to be future YouTube stars. And so they're very excited for the opportunity to go somewhere to do recording and have the ability to learn how to use that stuff more effectively. You know, the concept of what a library is continuing to evolve. It has evolved for centuries, from access just to books to music in the 1950s and 60s and 70s. And now there's many forms of media, including, you know, manga and graphic novels and things of that nature. And those things are important too. Again, being married to a school teacher, she would tell you that she doesn't care if the kids are reading comic books as long as they're reading. That's more important to her than isolating what they're working on. I also don't see this as an either or vote. Earlier this summer, we talked to Public Works and we spent weeks and weeks on these meetings, and the Public Works came back to us and said it didn't matter if we tried to throw as much money as possible at the sewers right now. There's a limit to how much work they can do at one time. The same thing applies to roads. We've tried to throw money at roads in the past as well, and there's a limit to how much road work we can do. We have limitations in our community. Unfortunately, we are meeting what we can do for road work right now. We are going to meet what we can do for sewer work in a timely fashion to finish the Locust Colton overflow. We have already put in place multiple other points and multiple other projects within the sewers that we are also going to fund to make it so that we can continue the work for the sewers in the future as well. So this is not an either or vote. This is, we can do both things, and we can do both things at the same time. Multiple people have already pointed out historically low interest rates. That's another reason why we should do that. But you know, the financing is really such a minuscule portion of it that from that point, but the need for the library, the number of people that live in Ward 1 that tell me that they walk to the library because it's got resources that they need because they don't have computers at home or they don't know how to use computers. They're using computers to apply for jobs. You know, that's an essential part of what the library does now that people don't think about. So I'm all in on voting for this. I'm super excited we're finally getting here. Oh, the last thing I want to talk about is, Sheila, you're absolutely right. Our budget has grown. It's a lot bigger. But a large part of why the budget has grown is because we weren't doing the necessary things we needed to do as a city. We weren't funding pensions. We weren't building roads, right? We're spending $7 million on roads and sidewalks right now. When I was first appointed, we spent $500,000. That filled a couple potholes in, and that was it. We didn't rebuild roads. We weren't working on sewer lines, which is part of the reason we had some of the problems this summer. We weren't working on a water plan and working on maintaining our water lines for the future. We weren't, there's God, the list of things that we weren't doing is almost longer than the list of things that we were doing. And now we are actually taking steps to make Bloomington the place where we want to live. So, and again, very valid point that the state of Illinois is losing people, and yet we gained people because people want to live here because we have these things. We have the job, we have the educated workforce, and we have people who want some nice things while they live here. When we look at the budget every year, there's so much money in that budget that is mandatory spending from state and federal mandates. There are a few things in there that we have control over. And one of the things that we have control over is we have the ability to make sure that we have an amenity like a library where people can go and do what they need to do and have that third space. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Becker, and then Emig and Montney.
So I won't rehash a lot of what's been said, but I do want to piggyback on some of the things Jamie said. I also am married to a teacher. She would also say that every kid reading, no matter what they're reading, is a wonderful thing, right? So I get that. Not doing this project doesn't take away that ability, doesn't take away the ability to use the libraries. My kids, all 7 of them, have used Bloomington's library and Normal's library greatly and benefited from them because they're there and they're existing and we can get an awful lot out of them the way they are. Okay. Jamie made another point that we spent $7 million on roads this year and said we can do both. Well, that's not true in my opinion. I respect Jamie's opinion, but in my opinion, we talked about roads earlier this year and we said, was 7 million enough to move the roads forward and get to a better place? And the answer was yes, if we were starting from a place where the roads were in good condition. But we all agreed on that day that the roads were not in good condition and there's no way that 7 million is enough. So every dollar that we spend on something else, instead of spending it on that critical, necessary infrastructure, is an opportunity cost. We absolutely have to be aware of that. And I respect everything that the library folks have done. They put a good plan together. They proposed a beautiful facility. I actually like what they proposed. I don't believe it is fiscally responsible to say that today, that we should do that. And I'll give the example to myself. In this trying time where it's uncertain, what do? I try and reduce the amount of money that I pay for nothing. Interest is nothing. No matter how cheap it is, it's still bad to pay interest. Every business that I work with, and hundreds of businesses that I've worked with, are tightening the belts, trying to spend less, trying to be aware, trying to be capable of dealing with whatever comes next. If the supply chain goes nuts, if we aren't able to get things, all these people are tightening their belts. If I say, no, it's okay to just spend the money on the library when I don't do it with my money or with my customers' money or my company's money, it's okay to spend it because it's your money, the taxpayers. When I wouldn't do it with my own, that's being a hypocrite, and I won't do that.
Okay, thank you. Before we go any further, I'd like to a motion to extend the time.
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Ime.
I'll
Is there-
second.
Okay, second by Councilmember Crumpler. By how much time? Let's say maybe 10 minutes, right?
10 minutes.
Okay,
Sounds
10
good.
minutes, okay. All right. Do you do a voice vote or? Okay, all right.
Yeah, electronic will be fine.
Electronic,
Oh,
okay. Okay, look at that. The item passes. No nays to announce. Thank you. Okay, so Councilmember Emig, so be mindful that we have 10 minutes, whoever's going to make comments afterwards.
I will be mindful and I will try to bring up a few points from my perspective that haven't been brought up before, and I do appreciate this very substantive conversation. What can we agree about? Everyone agrees that libraries provide a fundamental public service. They are open to all, accessible, a resource for information, a resource for essential literacy skills. And by literacy, that notion of what it means to effectively make sense of any symbolic text, any way of reading, writing, communicating, being critical. All of that is part of the conversation today about what it means to be literate. To me, a question of a library's worth is analogous to questioning the worth of public education. The capacity and needs of our community have simply exceeded the brick and mortar of this complex. We have heard this from those who have been demonstrating their excellent stewardship of this facility. They work there every day and engage with people. I don't think it's about an amenity. I would argue that the fundamental right to literacy, to access, to this kind of uncertain environment in which we're living, if anything, demands that there be more of this access to the community. I think that right, I would concur with other literacy folks in the field, that it's as fundamental as the right to vote. It's essential, it's necessary. And I don't think that by wisely investing in this project means that everything is jettisoned that we've committed to doing and more. I can't, well, I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of infrastructure funding we might now have access to now that the logjam has been cleared nationally. And there is money now for roads, for water, for sewer, but we're always going to have this conversation. Is it ever going to be the right time? Is there ever going to be enough of what we argue needs to be better maintained year after year? The roads are going to need maintenance every year. Why not also ensure that our families and our kids have access, have that literacy right that is so essential?
Thank you, Councilmember Motley.
So implicit in a lot of these comments is the belief that the current library doesn't meet the needs of literacy in our community. And I don't believe that's accurate. I visited the library just a few days ago with a new resident to Bloomington. I accompanied her to get her library card and to show her around. It's a very effective facility. Just a few months ago, we were in this room having discussions about solid waste. And we were talking about cutting services because we were underwater with regard to bulk pickup and other services that our constituents valued. I challenged the city staff to find offsetting cost reductions to avoid a tax increase, but not those that cut value-added city services that our residents have passionately told us are important to them and are a part of our vision as a community to provide quality basic services. I do think there's a tremendous opportunity for us to take a step back and look at our holistic spending approach and to look at things from the perspective of prioritization. Because otherwise, at what price would we not do this project? If it was 30, 40, I mean, is there a line where when we're talking about it specifically at an ideological level and not at a practical level, where we would say that cost is too much to bear?
Thank you, Councilmember Motley. And I'm gonna say last but not least, that's a hint for everybody.
I'll keep it very short. I too have followed this since 2014. It's been a very long journey. The same comments keep coming up year after year. There's been controversy over the years, specifically the large project, buying that meatpacking piece of land and having that huge, large project, which I thought was ridiculous, government run retail space. And then Connect Transit stuck their nose in and wanted to move to the Market Street garage. They had no business sticking their nose into our business. And when I look at this, the library funding will be 1 million per year. Is that correct? Okay. Because, and also the library is a separate taxing body. So when we start talking about roads and all this other type stuff, we're conflating a little bit. And the last thing I'd like to say is I have always requested and supported the idea of private funding in addition to having it supported by taxes. Because of this lengthy discussion and controversy over the last decade, donors do not want to come forward. And we are at the place right now that the taxpayers are being held responsible. And I'm really sad about that. I think there were donors ready. Even myself would be willing to donate. But here we are.
Okay, thank you. I think oh, okay. All right. Last but not least, one more time.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that. I realize that I'm quite the new person on the block, but this was definitely struck me as a place where I could get into the community. And I did. I went to multiple West Side meetings. I've been to a Dimmitt's Grove meeting, which is in my ward. I've been out on Nextdoor. I've been out on Facebook. And I literally will turn my paper around. I have tallied every yes to every no, including the no's of the signs in the audience. I have taken note of those and tallied your no's as well. At this point, there are over 80 more people that have asked me to say yes than have asked me to say no. And for that reason alone, because the majority of the voice of Ward 6 and the other people I've been in talk to that live in Bloomington, they have expressed that they do want this library expanded, and I will be voting yes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think at this point, we're ready to vote. Okay, the item passes. There are 2 nays to announce, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Becker and Councilmember Motney.
Okay, thank you. We are going to move on to the next item on the agenda. Which is City Manager's discussion.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I've got 3 slides and then a couple of additional comments. Phil, slide 1, please. This, we shared this in a fair amount of media outreach, but please take note, community, those that are in attendance. The downtownbloomington.org website is a tremendous resource. Melissa Hahn, the Economic Community Development Director, has done an excellent job with this. Overwhelming positive comments to this point. So please visit downtownbloomington.org. Next slide. Small Business Saturday, November 27th. This will be the weekend of Thanksgiving. Please come out and shop small, shop local. Next slide. This is a biggie for us. The Lieutenant Governor's recognition for excellence in downtown revitalization. We actually received 2 awards this year. And in the left to right, we have Samantha Malat with the city. We have Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton, Catherine Dunlap to the Lieutenant Governor's right, and then a representative, I believe, from DCO is to Catherine's right. But we received 2 awards promotion for the curbside farmers market, and then also economic vitality for downtown outdoor dining. So it's very exciting. Yes, thank you. And then a couple of additional comments, and then I'll be done. OSHA came out with guidelines and recommendations, not recommendations, but guidelines for employers that have an employee population 100 or more. So that's something that staff had been preparing for, knew the day was coming. Well, it's here, and working on that with all the different departments of the city. The fire department was already a part of this with the CDC guidelines that those in the medical field and our EMT paramedic status on our fire department put them in that status that there is a requirement to test if you are not vaccinated. And then the other item that I was going to share is Veterans Day this Thursday. For the veterans in the room, happy Veterans Day, and especially those in the community, thank you for your service. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Thank you. On the mayor's comments, I want to say also, happy Veterans Day. I'll be participating in an event at the McLean County Museum of History this Thursday, just to provide a few remarks in recognition of the day. I also participated on Friday in the march to provide support for Jelani Day and his family. And I want to say what I said at the march is that the Bloomington Police Department has been involved in a very significant way from the very beginning and will continue to be involved until they're able to find some answers. So I'm very proud of the way that they have conducted themselves professionally. And I do know that in situations like this, not a whole lot can be shared. But yet, they've remained very professional, even in light of the criticism. So we should recognize them for a job well done and a job that they will continue to do. And I'm going to turn it over to council members for comments. Councilmember Becker.
So real quick, I just want to make a comment about the general proceedings, and that is several people on this council voiced very different opinions than I do. But I have respect for the opinions and the input, and I try very hard to understand their input and really make a judgment based on that. I would ask that the people out there, when you come and make your comments and when you contribute input to us, be respectful of other people's opinions too. We all have a lens that we look through, and when we look through that lens, we see it from our viewpoint, and we apply whatever inputs we have. And that lens may often put us at odds with people, but only if we respectfully seek to understand first, do we ever grow and get better. So even though people disagree with me, I'm fine with that. That's how we get better. I'm going to vote my conscience, they're going to vote theirs, and we're going to do the best we can with the outcome of the votes to move forward to make the city better. When we have people that attack personally and are just disrespectful at every level, that's what undermines our process. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Crable.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm wearing blue tonight in honor of Diabetes Awareness Month. I'd like to take this opportunity to raise awareness about this life-changing and potentially fatal disease. My hope is that if more people are aware of the symptoms, they might catch it early and get treatment before any serious bodily harm is done. Diabetes is a chronic condition which impacts how your body turns food into energy. There are 3 main types: type 1, type 2, and gestational diabetes. Type 2 diabetes is the most common form and is when your body does not properly use the insulin being produced by your pancreas. Type 2 diabetes can be managed with a healthy diet, exercise, and sometimes medication. Type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune disease where your pancreas no longer produces insulin. As of today, nothing can prevent or cure type 1 diabetes. People with type 1 are completely reliant on external insulin in order to live each day. Gestational diabetes can develop in pregnant women, putting mother and child at greater risk for health problems and developing type 2 diabetes later in life. Here are some symptoms of diabetes that you should look at in yourself and loved ones. Unexplained weight loss, feeling very thirsty, frequent urination, constant hunger, extreme fatigue, cramping, tingling, pain or numbness in hands or feet, blurry vision or other eye symptoms, cuts and bruises that are slow to heal. Some people with diabetes have symptoms so mild that they go unnoticed. It's important for you to talk to your healthcare professional. Here are some statistics from the CDC. 34.2 million US adults have diabetes and 1 in 5 of them don't know they have it. This is why awareness is so important. The 34.2 million statistic is more than 10% of the US population, does not include people with prediabetes or children. Diabetes is the 7th leading cause of death in the US. Diabetes is the #1 cause of kidney failure, lower limb amputations, and adult blindness. In the last 20 years, the number of adults diagnosed with diabetes has more than doubled. To learn more, please visit trusted sources such as the American Diabetes Association or the Center for Disease Control. If you think you or someone you might have diabetes, please talk to your doctor. If you have diabetes, I encourage you to connect with others living with diabetes in our community. You can search for support groups online and on social media for the specific type of diabetes you have. There is no shame in having diabetes. And you don't have to go through it alone. You have a community full of wonderful people who are ready and willing to help. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councilmember Bullen?
Yeah, just real quick, we recognized runaway families for the month or children for the month. This month is also domestic violence, which not that they go hand in hand, but they're similar where the abuse has to leave, just like how a child may run away from a, unpleasant home environment. So I just wanted to recognize that.
Thank you. Okay, seeing, Councilmember Emig.
Yeah, it looks like Deputy City Manager Tyus stepped out, so I wanted to just give him a shout out because I reached out to him and he and city staff really helped resolve a very challenging issue with a water bill for one of my constituents. So I just wanted to thank him and staff for that publicly.
Thank you very much. Okay, seeing no other possible comments, then I'm gonna ask for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, and is there a second? Okay, second by Councilmember Emig. All those in favor signify